This is going to be a ramble. Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to a video in which I'm just going to ramble about life in the United States of America. Please keep in mind, moving forward in this video, is that I'm primarily talking about things that I see, conditions I see being present here in the United States of America. They may apply to other countries such as Great Britain in some ways, but this is specific to the United States of America. So there is, particularly if you spend any time watching the media or online or on social media of any kind, there is a definite growing feeling that things in the United States are terrible, and you'll hear lots of people say they're as bad as they've ever been. Well, I'm just going to tell you, calm down just a little bit. That's not true. World War II, the Great Depression, the Civil War, these are all times in American history when things have been far worse than they are right now. That doesn't mean that things aren't bad. That doesn't mean that I think that young people who are complaining about the conditions they face are whining or overwrought. Far from it. It just means that things are not as terrible as they have ever been. And, you know, in some ways, I guess that is a bizarre, sign of hope. So what problems are we facing in the United States of America today that I think have people convinced that things are just always terrible and will never get better? Well, number one, we are coming off of, and still really involved in the COVID pandemic. You cannot go through an event in which people across the United States of America and the world become increasingly isolated because of shutdowns, go through traumatic economic experiences, and lose, 1 million people plus to a deadly disease without that having a lingering effect. It is bound to create mistrust. It is bound to create a sense of isolation. It is bound to create health care problems and mental health care problems. And all those things are very real. And one of the things I think we have to realize is that it is going to take us a while to recover from that trauma. And that's what it was, kind of collective trauma. So, that's important and a very real thing to understand. But it's also one of those things that isn't going to be solved quickly. A second big problem here in the United States of America that people seem to be focused on is inflation. So, believe it or not, the United States economy is growing steadily and occasionally growing really quickly. And believe it or not, unemployment is way down. And believe it or not, wages are actually up. These are all normally good economic signs. But the problem is that we have become convinced that inflation is out of control. One reason why we've become convinced of that is that inflation was out of control in 2021 and 2022, where we saw, almost a 10%, 12%, I think, over both those years increase in inflation. And still today, inflation rates are a little bit higher than they were before. Now, there's a lot of misunderstanding about what causes inflation. You see a lot of people online saying, oh, the government's just printing money and that's what's causing inflation. The government is not printing money. That's not what is causing inflation. That's not how the Fed operates or how monetary policy operates. That's a whole other video. I won't get into it. But one of the things that contributes to inflation is economic growth. When the economy grows quickly over a short period of time, what happens is that manufacturers take advantage of that to raise prices. More people, your basic economics will tell you, more people with money chasing fewer goods leads to higher prices. That's a basic that's a basic cause of inflation. But what a lot of people don't recognize about inflation right now is that a huge chunk of inflation is literally caused by corporate greed. They are literally just raising prices to make profits at record levels. A lot of people want to blame politicians for inflation, and to be honest with you, there are things politicians can do to curb inflation once it takes place, but politicians don't control inflation. Businesses, by and large, big corporations control inflation. Another problem that people have today is debt. Rising amounts of personal debt, credit card debt, student loan debt, home loan debt, all these kind of things. All these debt problems are being created for lots of people, and that is a very, very real problem, and one that I think we do have to address one way or another. Another problem we see people complaining about a lot are the bad jobs. The jobs are dead end. They don't seem to have any meaning. They don't pay enough. They expect too much work for the amount of pay they're giving. This is where all the quiet quitting stuff came along. Those ideas, of only working as hard as you had to keep your job because your employer is only going to punish you with more work if you work harder. All those things come from this dissatisfaction with the way jobs work, with pay, with benefits, and with the lifestyle that job can afford you. And so what we see is an increasing number of people complaining and really being in a position where it's much harder for them to pay their bills working, one job, working the job perhaps that they went into debt, college debt to go and get. And so those are really legitimate complaints. But I think it's important that we understand what causes those things, or what has caused those things, and why is there this difference between the experience of millennials and Gen Z and baby boomers and then my own generation, perhaps Gen X. And I'm going to say that the reason for this is the election of Ronald Reagan and the embrace of trying to get back to what they refer to as free market capitalism. So in the Ronald Reagan Republican conservative economic viewpoint, free market capitalism is the best thing. It produces the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people. And to achieve that, what we've seen Republican presidents from Reagan to Trump do is cut taxes for the wealthiest and cut taxes for corporations and reduce corporate regulation. This began really with Reagan and continues on through today. It's not just Republican presidents who do that. Bill Clinton did a fair amount of this as well. Less Obama because he had less freedom to do so, and for the most part, none of Biden's policies didn't fall into line with this, but it's primarily a conservative Republican thing. Cut taxes for the wealthy, cut taxes for corporations, reduce regulations, get the government out of the economy, and let the economy run itself. Well, what have we gotten as a result of that? We've gotten a far more volatile economy than we've ever had in American history. If you think back over the history of American history, the recessions, depressions, panics we used to call them, used to come about one every 40 years. You couldn't necessarily plan for them, and there was a certain inevitability about them as factors change from the economy. You get these recessions where unemployment goes up, and banks fail, and those kind of things happen. But they happen more often now because there's less regulation of the economy. Okay, there's less regulation of financial markets. There's less regulation of business. And this less regulation, this reliance on more of the free market economy, is created more problems than just volatility. Deregulation has led to corporate mergers, so that there are actually fewer and fewer businesses out there. One of the things that free market people ignore and won't tell you, and kind of seem to gloss over somehow, is that as businesses compete, some succeed and some fail. As those that succeed, they gain more power, they gain more market share, they make more money, they accumulate more wealth. This makes it harder for new businesses to come and compete in those markets, which means that you don't really have a free market, because to have a free market, businesses need to be able to come and go in and out of the market freely, and they can't. And as these businesses build up more and more power, they merge with one another, they create fewer and fewer businesses, and you have less and less competition. Thus, we have situations where airline tickets almost all cost the same, because there are very few airline companies, and a lot of them basically work together to set ticket prices and to sell tickets. That is a result of a lack of competition that eventually this free market idea leads to what we used to call oligopolies, or kind of monopoly in terms of competition. Well, once that takes place, the benefits of the free market to consumers go away, because the benefit of the free market to consumers was that competition for customers kept prices low and quality high. When you get rid of competition, as we've seen take place with all these mergers because of deregulation and build up of corporate wealth, as all those things take place, then you have less competition and prices go up. As I said, about 50% of all the inflation that took place over the last 4 years can be laid directly at the feet of corporations taking huge profits. They don't have to raise prices, but they can, because they don't have any competition. On top of that, we have a situation in which tax cuts for the wealthy and corporations inaugurated and initiated by Republicans and conservatives lead to a concentration of wealth in the hands of fewer and fewer people. So more and more of our national wealth shift to the hands of fewer and fewer people. And that means those people have more and more power and more control, and they create situations which are better for them but worse for the rest of us. That is an inevitability of what we've seen, and we have seen that take place just during the pandemic. Billionaires increased their wealth tremendously during the worst economic time in American history that took place. And we've seen this shift in wealth to those people. That leaves less wealth for the rest of us, means the rest of us are competing for less, and the rest of us then have less power, because what that massive wealth build up of wealth means, and what we should have learned from the 19th century when a similar thing happened, is that those businesses then can corrupt our politicians. And the ultimate form of corruption in terms of our governing system was the passage of was the Supreme Court case in Citizens United, which basically said corporations like people and they have free speech, and campaign donations are free speech. This means that corporations and business can donate unlimited amounts of money to campaigns, and they can therefore have greater influence over politicians. And so, of course, we have a more corrupt system. And of course, they're going to give more money to those politicians who create programs and cut regulations and cut taxes for them and for the rest of us. So we have this kind of self-perpetuating situation. On top of that, there are other kind of social factors I think to keep in mind. One is that we have that the pace of modern society means we have a lot less patience in waiting for problems to be solved. You know, the truth of the matter is we are looking at some fairly deep systemic problems that are not going to be solved quickly, that have to be solved, are going to be solved over a long period of time, and that is going to take patience. So, you know, if these things have always been around, and these things have been around for decades, why is it that it seems to be such a problem now? Why is it that things seem to be so bad right now, and why do so many young people feel like they are getting the short end of the stick? And the answer is, the reason why it seems worse now is because what we see now are that white middle-class young people are experiencing the same problems this economy has created for minority groups and for single parents for decades. Think about those problems. Not being able to afford the lifestyle you want or need based on one job, massive amounts of debt, feeling locked out of better jobs. All these are problems that our system has created and, you know, made worse for people who are part of minority groups and for single parents for decades. But now they are affecting white, middle-class, college-educated people, and now it seems like more of a problem. I'm not saying that to make those people, white, middle-class, college-educated people, feel bad for complaining. I'm pointing out that what we're seeing then is the breakdown of the system that was created, or the exacerbation of the system was created during the Reagan years. And that the solution to that is to do things to address those problems. Like, for instance, forgiving college debt. That would be a massive middle-class tax cut. Like, for instance, creating a single-payer healthcare system where we don't have for-profit corporations, you know, selling healthcare to people, which they absolutely have to avoid economic catastrophe if they do get sick. But those companies then also have to make a profit, and they make massive profits. To take the profit out of that by providing this single-payer system, that would free up so much money that young people, that all people in the United States of America, and allow them to do things which create healthy economic growth, like buy homes, like make investments, like do the other things which are beneficial to the economy as a whole. Anyway, there you go. There is my rant about why things seem so terrible today. I look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.